process?
So there are currently, half a dozen Al Jazeera journalists, producers, cameramen in jail. Some of them have been there for over 6 months. Abdullah Shami is on hunger strike. He's in critical condition. He's lost at least like 40 pounds if you look at his images. Another one of our fellow colleagues had a broken arm or problems with his arm, and he wasn't given attention. So their situation isn't very optimistic. I wouldn't say that the Egyptian government is going to bow down to any campaigns to free AJ staff, which is a campaign that's global now, because it is about sending a message, not just to Al Jazeera, but to any media organization locally and outside of the country, that we will not tolerate any actions that make us look bad. Peter Greste, who's one of the Australian in jail, he wrote a letter, and in it he has a quote which says more or less that if our arrest has served as a chilling warning to others, if you basically do what the state says, then you are deserving of liberty, but if you don't, then you are a threat that must be crushed. So it is a message, and I actually believe that the more intense the campaign is, the less likely it is that the government will let them go. Their last trial, I think, on World Press Freedom Day, Muhammad Fahmy actually told the judge, that this is World Press Freedom Day, and the judge actually said, "Oh, happy World Press Freedom Day," and then sent them back to the dock, which was very ironic. So it is a message. It's not just because they're Al Jazeera, it's because they're journalists, and I think it speaks a lot about the state of journalism in Egypt today and how we look at it. Very much. Al Jazeera has been thoroughly demonized in Egyptian society. Our media narrative changes very rapidly from, someone's a hero to someone's a devil. And Al Jazeera is currently the devil for supporting the Muslim Brotherhood or for their biased reporting in some instances. That this means, because of the polarization of Egyptian society, now the narrative is you're either with Sisi or you hate Egypt and you want the terrorists to win, who is now the Muslim Brotherhood. People who were in power last year have now become the terrorists and the enemy, and kind of like you're either, which was the narrative back then, you're either with Morsi or you're an infidel. So there's no middle ground here. So journalism, especially Al Jazeera, is very, very, very thoroughly hated in Egypt now. But I would actually say this is a wider problem of how we look at journalists. Egypt is now one of the most dangerous places to be a journalist. According, to the Committee to Protect Journalists, just in the last 6-7 months, you've had half a dozen killed, a lot detained, assaulted, sexually harassed, media organizations raided. So it's across the board. And according to Freedom House, a couple of years ago, we were partly free when it comes to media freedoms. We are now classified as not free because of campaigns, to intimidate journalists, to prosecute them. Bassem Youssef was a huge case, when he had complaints filed against him. So it's across the board and extra bad when it comes to Al Jazeera. So just let me say that any news organization, independent, state-owned, there will always be bias. There will always be someone from above, someone who has the money, someone who has the power. There will always be a direction, no matter how objective you try. There will also be personal interests. The best journalists I know have still their own beliefs, which they try their best not to let filter through, but sometimes, no matter how carefully, they do. So I don't believe there's any news organization in the world, no matter what history they have, no matter how powerful, how influential they have, that is 100% free from bias. That said, I have worked in a variety of news organizations. I worked for CNN, I worked for MSNBC, I've worked for Foreign Policy. I've done a lot of stuff, and what I've come to believe is that you, as a journalist, are responsible for your work, and that you have your fights with your editor whenever there's problems over a story or a certain, whether it came to the Palestinian Intifada, do we use the word martyr or do we use the word suicide bomber? All these tiny little things journalists always have to work through. So of course one of the biggest issues with last year was it a coup or was it a revolution in Egypt? This is a huge word. And I think I'll get to your question, but one of the biggest uproars happened in Egypt at the time when the first people, CNN, called it a coup. And just to highlight that it isn't just, the anger wasn't just directed at Al Jazeera. It was directed at all foreign media who classified the ouster of President Morsi as a coup. If you had looked at, oh my God, I got so many messages, please send this to CNN, you're always on them, tell them that this is wrong, this is a people's revolution, they shouldn't tell the world that this is a coup, we love our military, the military only listen to us, etc., etc. So it's not just Al Jazeera that is considered biased. Any foreign media which reported at the time that it was a coup was considered biased. And again, that always goes back to how do you as an individual frame a certain event, and how does this media then fall in line with what you see or not. And that's how your perceptions are created. So if Al Jazeera had said that this was, people's revolution, and thank God the military is out, they would have been applauded, which is what happened back in Morsi's time, because when Morsi won and Al Jazeera was covering it, oh my God, Al Jazeera is so good, they're saying that, we've had democracy, because their line of thought was following what was happening on the ground at the time. So I actually believe everything fluctuates. And I believe that what's considered an enemy today could be considered the hero tomorrow, and that's actually to reflect the events in Egypt. That's kind of what's happening, right? We love Mubarak, we hate Mubarak, we love the army, we hate the army, we love Morsi, we hate Morsi, we love the army, and you never know what could happen next year. Mm-hmm. So I will not say that some of Al Jazeera's coverage has been unbiased. It definitely has been biased in some instances. But again, I cannot judge for a channel or any news organization what they do. I can only judge the individual work of the journalists. And what I can actually say is that for me, Al Jazeera English is actually one of the most professional channels I've had the honor of working with, and which is not a lot, and the journalists who actually are in jail, which is pretty ironic, actually work for Al Jazeera English, not Al Jazeera Arabic, which is the accused of the bias. So that is unfortunate. But again, just to summarize, I feel every news organization has its bias. Some are better at hiding it than others, and the people's perception of this coverage matters very much when we come to classify, is this channel a good channel or a bad channel? It depends on how they're covering the events. So next year Al Jazeera could be a hero again. You never know.